2.4 billion by National Treasury, and there is leaving a deficit of 14.577 billion, which means that we're falling short, so that you have cases where activities like mass voter registration, which require 30 days, it means we have cut down to 15 days. We expected to cut down on the staff at the polling stations. All these activities are based on the legal framework.
All right, so that is Wafula Chebukati speaking in Mombasa earlier this week on Monday. It was actually, that was 9th of August, exactly 1 year to the next general election. And one of the things that came out, which he's speaking about there, is what looks like a massive deficit, 14 billion. They need 40 point something billion. They have 26, so 14 is missing. And Yvonne, what struck me is the fact that they were saying they have to cut down on things, probably the number of people working per polling stations and everything, and perhaps that would have implications in terms of maybe how quickly things are processed there. Perhaps there would be the whole thing of exhaustion and all of those things. I don't know what you saw when Chebukati was speaking.
It would be tough to see where they would make cutbacks, particularly when it comes to direct election spending. You need a certain number of people per polling station, the presiding officer, the returning officer, including even persons dealing with security. I think when it comes to election operations themselves, including procurement of things like ballot papers, some of the BVR kits, I think about 10,000 or 11,000 of them will need to be purchased out of the total number that there were. So you can take a look at that. There's the licenses for those kits that lapsed and would have to be repurchased. There's our ballot papers, which in fact Marjan of the Secretariat said have 9 security features, and those are usually printed abroad. You remember, you know, Al Ghurair in Dubai, as opposed to other countries. So when you take a look at the cost of particularly direct election spending, it would be hard to see where they would do it. But then it's also a point to note, by the way, that in 2017 and in previous elections, we've actually funded an election, you know, in general, through more than just one financial year. I think before it was about 2 or 3 financial years that helped, you know, support the operations. Because remember, the IEBC also has just general, you know, budget lines, even in between elections. You know, there's quite a bit of work that they would have to do. So with that deficit, then, you know, we would start to see what would happen. Would we need a supplementary budget? Because the next election would be happening, I think, just about a month into the new financial year next year. So some things to take a look at. But then also the fact that our elections cost quite a bit of money, 40.9 billion. Fine, it is significantly less than 2017, which was at 49.9 billion, and that's not even counting the close to 12 billion it cost for the repeat presidential election. But all of these things, as they keep saying, is because of trust. You know, in this country, that we don't trust the processes, and therefore we have to go for expensive technology. But when you take a look at how other countries are conducting it, it is far cheaper. Even countries like Ghana, which, by the way, also have electronic voting just like we do, and their costs are literally a fraction of our election.
Point out in your explainer that in the whole world we are only second to
Papua New Guinea, which is 6,300 shillings per voter. We're at 2,700. Ghana is at 100 shillings.
And Rwanda is $1?
Rwanda is $1 per voter, 100 bob. So yeah, it's quite telling.
I think, Joe, one of the, Yvonne was talking about some of the costs that the IEBC has to cover. I think one of them is how to have an election during a pandemic, COVID-19. I remember the chairman was speaking about how they'll need about 588 million to procure items to be used in the COVID-19 prevention, including the thermometers and the sanitizers and the soap and the washing points. And he talks about how that is very important because of the circumstances we face. But then when he says now they may need to sort of cut back on some of the activities, one being the mass voter registration exercise, which should really run for 30 days, but he said they may need to do 15 days. Considering the fact that they're targeting to have 5 or 6 million new voters by then, it's a tall order. And we were discussing this with Gashuri about our culture as Kenyans. Yes,
last minute.
Yeah, we want to go on the last day and request extension. if things go as they are now, your extension hakuna, so watu waende wajiandikishe kama wapiga kura. But then when you worry about them having to cut down on some of the critical activities, including what we talked about the employees that they'll have to get, the temporary ones who may need to come and run the elections, they may need to cut that down by half, from 6 billion shillings to 3 billion. But then now we look at the credibility. IEBC is struggling with that issue after the 2017 elections and having to have a repeat poll and all that. The issue of IEBC has to redeem itself in the eyes of the people. We need to believe in IEBC as a body. And yeah, you said that all Kenyans want the latest technology, so that tuamini kura iko sawa, and issues to do with technology, issues to do with reach, issues to do with whether transmission of results. In the past, we've raised questions, zikichelewa tu hivi tunasema what is going on, are they quicking numbers? We raised the question of why it's taking so long, like in Kiamba and Muguga, why there were just one constituency and one ward, and it took so long. How are we going to do 290 for 6 positions, not just one? So all those issues brought together really is a tall order for IEBC in terms of whether they're going to have an election that will be credible with the funding that they already have here.
Linus, it is quite interesting that we seem to be investing more and more in all these security features and all that, but there's really no evidence that trust is growing in the election process and all of that, because now we have perhaps some watermark or something that wasn't there in the last election. It just looks like there is a big disconnect, because one of the biggest justifications, even if you listen to the IEBC, for this high cost is that they are investing in all kinds of things to make the election more trustworthy, that people can actually believe that this is what happened. But I am not too sure that there is any evidence right now that people relate the credibility of the election with the security features, for example, that are there in all the different electoral materials.
Because, Joe, I think the security features are going to the wrong places. I think the right place to have the watermark and all these security features is in the mindset of people who control not the voting, but actually the counting of votes.
And transmission.
And transmission, increasingly transmission. Because Kenyans hold very peaceful elections. We all know, and we've done this many times, that the pictures we have from polling stations are of peaceful people lining up.
And we wait there all day.
Yes. And in fact, in recent times, some of them even win national awards, like the Githeri man lining peacefully with his bag of
whatever that was, yes.
Yeah, you remember that.
Linus, don't talk badly about Githeri. We're here.
Githeri man himself, I mean, he won because voting goes on well in this country.
Right.
We're yet to get a winner from the counting of votes, because the counting of votes becomes a mysterious event. And when you look at the Supreme Court case of 2017, it sounded like a criminal case hearing, because very simple things like asking the IEBC, what are those on the screen? What do you call them? Are they results?
Provisional.
And you know, they could not even step forward to own, because quite frankly, and in the end, as the court established, nobody knew where those numbers were coming from. Not even media, we didn't know. I mean, we were told by IEBC, here are the numbers, so put them on the screen. The dishonesty is actually human. It has nothing to do with those security features. It has nothing to do with ballot papers. We can print them as expensive as we would afford, but if the mindsets is that of playing around with numbers, then we'll end up in the same place. You look at 2007, look at 2013 and 2017. There have been very deliberate efforts to make sure the numbers go a certain way. That is a fact. And we are glad that we have the court ruling of 2017 nullifying the presidential election, that's saying, you know, you can't account for this because you're not following the process at all. I think that ruling would apply strictly for 2013 and even more for 2007.
Joe, next year, will even be more intense compared to 2013 and 2017, if the political environment as we see it now is anything to go by. And security features, much as they will be on the ballot papers and everywhere else, the most important place to be is in the people voting, the people counting, the people transmitting, and the people contesting. Because as long as you go to an election with a win or win kind of a mental setup, no matter how the vote outcome will be, there will be allegations of either it has been stolen or there are malpractices and something like that. One, let the politicians who are contesting go into it believing that IEBC will do a good job. On the other hand, IEBC must demonstrate that it can do a good job. And then ultimately, people will trust the process. But as long as people don't trust the process, as long as people don't trust the umpire, as long as the politicians who are the players in this game don't trust the people who are, managing it, it will be problematic. And no matter how many security features we put in the ballot papers, it will not be enough. Number two, I think increasingly, much as we will have laws in Parliament, because there are so many laws related to the elections, we may have as many as we can, but as long as they're not being implemented effectively, diligently, we will have a problem. So I think the cost is there because we have made it to be as it is. Lastly, Parliament has a role in allocating resources. If we strongly feel that 40.9 billion shillings is a lot of money, I would think let the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee call IEBC, ask them to itemize one after the other the cost of this election. Then Parliament, in its wisdom, will hold a plenary session and say, this is okay, this is not okay, slash it.
All right, I think we need to take a break because when we come back, we've talked so much about the referee, but the players are also jogging on the sidelines, so we'll talk about them a little bit when we come back.